Hello, we want to briefly share God's Word with you as we continue to read through the Bible. David heard of Saul and Jonathan's death and sung a lament. David went up to the towns of Judah, and the men of Judah came to anoint David king over the house of Judah. Meanwhile, Abner, the commander of Saul's army, made Ishbosheth, Saul's son, king of the northern tribes. Civil war broke out between Judah and the northern tribes of Israel, and Abner reluctantly killed Joab's brother Asahel. The war lasted a long time, and David grew stronger. Abner got mad at something Ishbosheth said and deserted to David's camp. Joab secretly called Abner to a private place and avenged his brother Asahel's death by killing Abner. After the death of Abner, two of Ishbosheth's men snuck into the inner room and killed Ishbosheth. All Israel came to David and made him king. David then went up to conquer Jerusalem. Then David did something greater. He defeated the Philistines. David eventually brings the ark to Jerusalem. As they brought the ark, everyone celebrated, and David danced jubilantly before the Lord. Michal, daughter of Saul, showed contempt for David, and Michal had no children to the day of her death, which was a disgrace to the women of Israel. After David was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest on all sides from his enemies, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am, living in a palace of cedar, while the ark of God remains in a tent." Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you." That night the word of the Lord came to Nathan the prophet, saying, "Go tell my servant David, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me, and your throne will be established forever." When David heard this, he went in and sat before the Lord overwhelmed. David defeated the Philistines, the Moabites, Edom, and Amalek. David reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and right for all the people. David asked if there was someone still left of the house of Saul to whom he should show kindness for Jonathan's sake. Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in both feet." So King David had him brought from Lo-debar. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all of the land belonging to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." In the course of time, the Amorites became a stench in David's nostril. David fought them and defeated the Amorites.
It's important that we love our enemies. David and Saul were enemies, and they had a bitter rival. But David was continually showing kindness to Saul. He showed kindness to Saul in 1 Samuel, and then in 2 Samuel we see David showing kindness even to the members of Saul's family. It's so important that we show the love of God to even those who are opposed to us, even those who are against us. Because as we saw in chapter 3, that as David showed that kindness, then his house grew stronger and stronger, and Saul's house grew weaker and weaker.
Okay, question. Why was there so much war?
You know, I believe that it's always in God's plan, whatever happens, that it will come together for him to establish his kingdom. You see, David was a key player in the future that would follow, and God was just aligning him to his proper purpose. He was putting him in place for what was going to happen. And sometimes even in our lives, things that seem to be falling apart are actually coming together.
Share us, subscribe, and or say amen at the YouTube section below. Thanks for having us. See you next time.